All right, so part 2 of breastfeeding questions and the most frequently asked questions, and I am going to be on getting these questions from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and this is their frequently asked questions about breastfeeding. Whoops, sorry. I'm trying to mess with this website here. Okay, so the first question is, how long should I breastfeed my baby? So the recommended is anywhere from the 6 months up to a year, and it's encouraged even to go up to 2 years if possible. They're just finding that the longer that you breastfeed, the stronger your baby's immune system is, because you're continuing to pass your microbes and your antibodies to your baby, and that helps build their immune system and helps to make them stronger. I don't like how this is trying to, there we go. Now, when should I start feeding my baby solid foods? And this I like to just say, refer to your doctor. Every doctor says something different, and the encouraged is 6 months. This is like changed. Like WIC used to be 4 months, and now it's 6 months, but you will still have doctors that will say 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So basically I would say speak with your doctor, your pediatrician about this. And I know that so much information has come out about it, but typically they say that the baby's digestive system is still so, it struggles so much by about 6 months is when you could start to introduce solids. And a lot of times it's around, that's why a lot of times they'll say, breastfeeding up to this point, because the baby's stomach can handle the harder things to digest a little bit, as their stomach kind of has had a chance to mature a little bit. And I know there was a recommendation as soon as they could sit up and reach for food, or reach for your food, is a good indication that they're close to being able to eat on their own and start solids. But the recommended is 6 months. That's through Centers of Disease Control. And probably, yes, the American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends 6 months. But like I said, you will hear different answers to this question by your doctors. Some will say 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, but it is recommended 6 months. What you choose to do is up to you, and what your doctors tell you, but according to the Academy of Pediatrics and Centers of Disease Control and World Health Organization, they all recommend 6 months. How do I prepare for breastfeeding? What's so wonderful about breastfeeding is you don't really need to do anything special to prepare for when the baby comes. The only thing that you need to do is learn as much as you can about it, what to expect, just so that you kind of know what's going to happen, and kind of like just are preparing yourself for the different things to expect and challenges that may arise, so that you know what to do and you know that what's normal and what isn't, and it's not as stressful for you. Another important thing is to find a good support group, find some lactation support, so that when you and if you do need it, you have those phone numbers, you have those dates, the days they meet, that kind of thing, just so you have those people to reach out to. Because if you need it, you don't want to be searching at that time. It just helps relieve your mind a lot. Let's see if they say anything else. You can get some good books that talk about it, but like I said, there's really nothing special. There is one thing I would recommend, is if you're going to return to work or school, it would be good to start planning what you want to do when that time comes. Some moms say they're going to stop breastfeeding at that point, but a lot of other moms they want to continue breastfeeding, and it is possible to exclusively breastfeed even if you work. It is possible to be able to be successful and reach 6 months, a year, even 2 years working full-time, part-time, any of those things. You just need to be prepared for it. So you need to have a good pump. a good pump that's going to, especially a double pump electric, that will help you to be able to get the milk out of the breast. One that's well recommended is usually like Medela or Amida. Those are two very good ones that I know of that work well. Knowing like a daycare or whoever's going to watch a baby and getting them informed and educated on milk storage and what you're expecting, and your employer and what they'll allow you to do as far as pumping, or if they'll let you leave to breastfeed, all those kinds of things. Finding a plan and getting it put together before you have the baby, and because once you have the baby, you're going to be so overwhelmed and so busy, you're not going to want to take the time then to try to figure all that stuff out. So that is one thing I would say you could do to be prepared. How can you find breastfeeding friends? A breastfeeding friendly medical practice. And that is something you could just call on the phone, get a list of questions together to ask them, and kind of help you. You just interview pediatricians. That's kind of, they're there for you. So get yourself a list of questions and interview them before the baby comes. Who should I call if I need breastfeeding help? This again would be your lactation support, whether it be IBCLC that works out of the hospital or a private practice, or someone like myself, certified lactation counselor. A lot of times we work privately. We don't work in hospitals. So we have our own private practice. Many do home visits or allow you to come into an office visit. WIC also offers this breastfeeding support. So just looking for those things, getting phone numbers and names and meeting with those people before the baby's born would help you a lot, just so that when you do have those questions, you know who to call. And it also helps to kind of build a relationship. You might like one over the other, and you feel more comfortable with one over the other. So by getting to know these people ahead of time, you kind of know who you're comfortable with and who you would feel comfortable asking certain questions with. Should I join a breastfeeding support group? I recommend it just because it kind of helps you get through any challenges you might face, but it also gets you out of the house. It gets you meeting with other moms. It is overall good for you, good for the baby, and just gets you out of the house. And it's good for you all around. How often should I nurse in the first few weeks? And this is really crucial to your milk supply, how much milk you can hold in your breast, how much milk you'll be able to feed your baby at one feeding or at one setting. And so you want to be looking to feed your baby in those first few weeks anywhere from 8 to 12 times a day. You should look for 10 to 12 times a day, which would be anywhere between every 1 to 3 hours. Every single one of my babies were every hour and a half, which is very normal and typical because breast milk is only in their system for an hour and a half. So anywhere from that hour, hour and a half to 2 hour mark, 3 hours is the longest you would go. But let's say you have a baby who feeds every hour and then they sleep for 4 or 5 hours, and then they feed again, every hour for a certain amount of time. What you're really looking for is feeds. Count feeds and less counting hours. So make sure you get that 10 to 12 feeds or 8 to 12 feeds. But I would say in those first 2 weeks, you're looking for 10 to 12 feeds. Try to make sure you get those 10 to 12 feeds, and you don't have to worry as much about every hour, or every 2, or every 3, or whatever. Just make sure they're getting their 10 to 12 feeds. So it could be every hour for a certain block of time, and then a longer block of time of sleeping, and then whatever. So just that's kind of what you're aiming for. 10 to 12 feeds a day. What if my baby is premature or ill? And this is something to prepare yourself for. What would happen if the baby would come early? And basically at that point, you're going to want a hospital-grade pump to be able to pump your milk. At the same times you would feed the baby is how often you would want to pump, just to get your milk supply where it needs to be and to be able to provide the milk for your baby, whether they're in a hospital or at home with you. Babies that are premature do tend to struggle with latching at times. So doing what you need to do to feed the baby by syringe or spoon or cup feeding, just until the baby is strong enough to suck. You can do some research, especially if you have had premature babies in the past. I wouldn't overly worry about it, but it is something that you can prepare for especially if it's something that you have experienced. If the baby is ill, again, any separation you would want to pump, a hospital grade pump. A lot of times hospitals will rent them out to you. WIC does rent them out for free if the baby and you are separated, and if you are a WIC client. So you can look into that. And then a lot of IBCLCs will rent them. And you just kind of look around for a good hospital grade pump. If you cannot get one, then a good personal use pump is good as well. And I would go for a double electric just because it's less time that you have to spend. If you're just pumping once a day or twice a day, it's not a big deal. But when you're pumping that often, you're going to want something that's fast, efficient, and works well. How should I store expressed breast milk? As I said in my other video, I am going to put the link to this this website in my description so that you can go back and look and read some of these things, because I'm kind of wanting to move quickly. Every single one of these could be a video in themselves. So I'm just kind of wanting to go through them quickly and kind of answer them as simply as I can. But if you need further information, feel free to email me or comment below. And you can also check out this link and read a little bit more on it. You know, it constantly changes the storage of breast milk. But freezing your breast milk, you can do it in a baggie. Ice cube trays are another common thing. Usually in the freezer, it depends. If it's a refrigerator freezer, it's good for 6 months. If it's a deep freezer, you can go up to a year. They suggest, 3 to 6 months if it's kept in a 0-degree freezer. So basically, and this continues to change over time, and every website you go to will again give you is a little bit of a variance. It's not a huge variance. Basically, a freezer 6 months, a deep freezer a year, and it does depend on the type of freezer. If it's like one of those little mini refrigerators with a little small freezer, that one probably would only be about 3 months. Any milk that you are not going to use in a 24-hour period, you should freeze. Once you've thawed out milk, it can go in the fridge, but you want to use that thawed milk within 24 hours. Milk can stay in the fridge for a week. By that 7th day, if you are no longer going to, you're not going to use it anytime soon, you can freeze it at that point. But just remembering that if you thaw something, use it within 24 hours. But if you've immediately pumped it and put it in the fridge, you want to use it within a week. And again, you're going to read different information, different variances on this. Look for the most recent that you can get, the most recent information. Try not to look like at an old pamphlet, because things have changed. I mean, our freezers and fridges are different, and how cold we keep them. And of course, the areas that we live may change that as well. So definitely do your research for the area that you live in and try to get as close to those as you possibly can. But like I said, on average, 6 months in a fridge freezer, a year in a deep freezer, and 1 week in the refrigerator. And if you pump it and you leave it out, it's good for anywhere between 6 to 8 hours, of course, depending on how hot the room is. If the room is very hot, then you, of course, have to think like that. Like if you're taking the milk out, it's not something that has to be kept cold. It can be kept at room temperature for up to 6 to 8 hours, depending on the temperature of, say, where you're going to be. So again, you want to do a little bit of research on that and make sure that you, get the most recent information and what most applies to where you're at in your area that you live. Because like I said, areas that are warmer, it would be a little less. But on average, 6 hours. I would say if it's a pretty warm area where you're at and the house is pretty warm, I would say 4 hours. So just like I said, do some research. Another good tip when you are freezing milk is to freeze in 2 to 4 ounce baggies. If you try to freeze something in an 8 ounce bag, then unfreezing it and trying to use that whole entire bag because you don't want to refreeze it can be a little bit difficult. So try to do 2 to 4 ounce bags, and that way you're less likely to waste any milk. I'm trying to think of any other tips that I would give for storing. The other thing that I would recommend, and I recommend all mothers, whether you work or you don't work, to begin pumping at least once a day to start a stash of backup milk in your freezer. You sort of want to think about having a supply for 1 week in case of an emergency. So like if you're sick or separated and you're not unable to pump, so it's kind of good to have at least a week's supply of, you know, milk in your freezer. So that's something that you can like work towards. And whether you're going to be mom at home all the time, if you're going to be working, it would be a little bit different. And I have some videos on that, and there's also some other information you can look up on kind of like what you want to look for as far as freezing for your baby. And it kind of is hard because you need to figure out what your baby is going to drink in the time that you're gone. So if your baby typically is going to drink anywhere between 4 to 8 ounces while you're gone, and you can only pump 2 ounces at a time, then you know you're going to need to pump more often, and how many bags you're going to need in the freezer. But if you are someone who pumps 5 to 6 ounces and the baby only takes in 3, and so it just depends on how much your baby takes and how much you're able to pump. So that's something to keep in mind. How do I thaw milk and serve it? So basically when you take it out of the freezer, you just put it in hot water, you know, run the hot water over it from the sink. You don't have to boil or anything. Let it thaw and come to room temperature, and the baby can then drink it. You do not need to heat it up. You're not trying to kill anything like you do with formula. You're trying to kill any bacteria, but you do not need to do that with breast milk, and it only needs to be at room temperature. So just bringing it to room temperature, so just running it under warm water will be the best way that you can thaw it and serve it. Some people will heat milk in a microwave, and of course this is very dangerous. It also it destroys vitamins and proteins that your baby would need. So the best thing I said is just to run it under hot water, and really you can do that with whether it's frozen or in the fridge and kind of cold. You can still run it under hot water just to kind of bring it to room temperature. What should I do about breastfeeding my baby if my family is involved in a disaster? Breastfeeding is basically a disaster preparedness. If you are breastfeeding fully and exclusively, you will not need to worry. And it's disaster because your baby, you're not gonna need to worry about water, safe water. You're not gonna need formula, that kind of thing. So basically, probably one of the best things in case of disaster is if you're breastfeeding, because you know that you're gonna have plenty of milk. The baby's not going to be affected. In fact, there was in Haiti, I believe it was, I think that was where it was, but there was I don't know if it was a tsunami or the earthquake, and the mom was trapped with her baby, and the baby was good, was not malnutritioned or dehydrated at all because mom was breastfeeding. Now, mom was a little dehydrated and a little bit, you could malnutrition because of being trapped, but the baby was not because she was able to breastfeed. So that is in itself a disaster preparedness. So I hope that those questions helped you a little bit. Like I said, they're all worthy of a video. This is just kind of a quick response to them. I will put the information below in the description box. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any other questions or any other comments or concerns, and I will see you guys again in my next video. Have a great day.